name is Pastor Ray. Welcome to Teaching from the Table. We're going to go into the book of Exodus, chapter 14. I'm going to read verse 29 through 31st. And it goes like this. But the Israelites had walked through the sea on dry land, with the water like a wall to them on their right and their left. The day the Lord saved Israel from the power of the Egyptian, and the Israel saw the Egyptian dead on the seashore. When the Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptian, the people feared the Lord, believed in him, and in his servant Moses. I'd like you to understand one thing. We live in a world of many situations. Right now, somebody's having a hard time. Somebody's dealing with a loved one that they lost. Somebody's in the hospital right now trying to make it to the next day. Somebody at home right now don't have bread on the table. But I'm going to tell you one thing. God is a good God. I was saying for this morning, God has walls in place for you and I. God has walls in place for you and I. I need you to understand that the Israelites, when they were leaving Egypt, they were going toward the Red Sea. And God provided walls around them for their protection. Because at that time when they was in the city in Egypt, they was having a hard time. They were having a hard time with situation. They were having family problems. They was being mistreated. They was being spit on. They were being kicked around. But I'm going to tell you, they had in a situation that things played out for them because they had God on their side. But how it all came about was that you have to pray, you have to believe, and you have to fear God. Some of them was praying. Some of them believed in God. And some of them feared God. But when they approached the Red Sea, and the sea opened up, and walls on both sides as they were walking on dry ground, you can believe that a lot of them start to believe in the living God. Don't get me wrong, you get a group of folks in a group sometime. You might always have one person will tell you, I really don't believe in the living God. And sometimes God has to just show up and show out and let that person know that I am God. And at the same time, that's what he did for the Israelites. He came up, he showed out and showed them what kind of power that he had. You got to understand something about Pharaoh in the group with Pharaoh. When Pharaoh always trying to go against the power of the living God. He had people in places to do magic tricks to the eye and make things happen. But guess what? God always was in control. And God knew every plan that the Pharaoh was going to do. But God had to let the Israelites know that, hey, I'm going to get you out of this land, and I'm going to bring you to the land of milk and honey, but you got to pray, and you got to fear me, and you got to know that I am God. In other words, you got to believe that I am the living God. And today we live in a world that a lot of people right now having situations, they're going through hard times, but they believe there's a God, and some don't believe in God at all. Some will tell you, I believe in God, but they are not believing in the living God. So sometimes as saints and people out there trying to find their way, we have to ask questions like, what kind of God do you believe in? Tell me about your God. See, what's wrong with us today in the church? That when somebody asks us about Jesus, we don't want to talk about it. Somebody asked us, could you tell us a little about Jesus? Some of us don't even want to talk about it. But we can talk about other things. It's kind of amazed me that I love talking about Jesus, but there are folks out there who don't want to talk about Jesus. But you got other religions out there who would talk about their religion all day long. They would even come to your house and knock on your door early in the morning and talk about their God. So what I'm trying to tell you this morning is that the Israelites, when they were crossing over to dry land, a lot of things was going in play. You have to understand something. There were probably over 10,000 people walking across that water. But God was protecting them. And you got to understand something about those folks that was walking across. I mean, I can only imagine that when they saw when the sea opened up and they was walking across that dry ground and it went wet, and all at once when they looked back and they saw Pharaoh's soldiers, being drowned in the water. I can imagine what was going through their mind. First of all, I know if it were me walking through, I was like, oh, I know it's a God. Because God is the only one who can do this. You got to remember one thing, God is the creator. And the reason why we're here today is because of God. What I'm trying to tell you is that some of us are living just like the Israelites was, living with fear. Fear of another man gonna do something to us. We're living in fear because we don't want to call on the living God. And the reason why I said that, because, you have to call on the living God to get rid of some of that fear that you got balled up on the inside of you. What my day gonna be like tomorrow? What I'm gonna do tomorrow? Well, in the bottom line, you got to have God on your side. You got to fear God. Now I'm gonna tell you right now, I fear God. And I love Jesus. And the only reason why that situation happened for them to walk across dry land because it was the living God. And because the leader of the group who was leading them fear God. So you got to understand something. Leaders makes a difference in a group. Make a big difference in a group. So you got to realize that being a leader is not an easy job. But it's like anything else. In order to get rid of the tail, you have to kill the head. But if you want the tail to function, the head got to function. So what I'm trying to tell you, the head, he feared God. It's like me I'm a pastor. So by being a pastor, and I got sheep up under me, I have to fear God. In order to make things happen for the church to keep moving. So you got to understand something about the leader here. He feared God. He knew God was real. But he had to keep it moving. And by keeping them moving, he had to constantly talk to them and let them know that, hey, the reason we got over here because of the living God. Now, when everything's said and done, when they got crossed, guess what? Doubts start coming into their mind. How we gonna survive? Where we gonna get bread from? How we gonna do this? Well, the bottom line is that you know that it was a living God because you walked on dry land. So why are you having problems now? It's the same thing today. We ask God to give us nice things when God give it to us, and when things go wrong, then we get upset. Well, the thing about it, you get upset because when you got it, did you still tell God that you love him? Did you still pray to God and tell God, God, keep helping me? God, thank you. Because sometimes we receive a gift from God and then we forget about God. So what I'm trying to tell you that when the Israelites got across the Red Sea and they saw the wonders of God's work, some of them erased God from their mind. And they start thinking about how we gonna survive. Well, in my opinion, they still should have been thinking about, hey, thank you, God. And I know if you got me through here, you'll put walls up for me to be protected. And sometimes we need that wall. There's nothing wrong with you asking God to give you walls of protection. I tell him all the time when I'm praying, God, give me walls to protect me. In other words, let God know, God, without your walls of protection, I wouldn't be here today. You know, some of us traveling back and forth to work every day. And you get there, you say, man, how did I get through that? Well, you got through it because you believed in God, you had faith in God, and you was talking to God. And God put walls of protection around you. You know, it's kind of funny. We used to come home from when we was upstate and come and see my parents, my wife's parents, and the thing about it was that we got ready to leave. You know, we say a prayer, and we come down, we say a prayer, and we always say, God, put a wall of protection around us, protect us as we travel. It got so good that the kids, they were looking for that prayer. And I think my son one time said, Mom, we haven't prayed yet. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to tell you, when you get something in sync and you're doing something when it comes to God, your family get involved too. If you pray every day at the dinner table, guess what? The little ones around the table gonna want to do it also. So what I'm trying to tell you is that when the folks that was crossing over, the Israelites, when they was crossing, their mind was happy. They were in a good position to thank God. But at the end of the day, when they got across, things changed for them. And what I'm trying to tell you this morning is that, you know, we have to keep on loving God. We have to keep on believing in God. Because good things can happen to you right now. And when something good happens to you, thank God for it. Not just for that moment, but the day afterward. Sometimes it's okay to reflect back and say, you know what? I always want to be in a nice house. I always want to have a nice car. I always want to have a good job. I always want to be in a good relationship with my wife, with my husband. I want to be in a good relationship with my kids. I want to be in a good relationship with my co-workers. Well, the thing about it is that when things do get rocky, you always can reflect back and say, you know, it was by God. So, in other words, what you need to do is recollect yourself and say, hey, listen, God, I know you've always been with me. I know you always had walls around me. But God, I need you now. Because sometimes God just wants to see how much you love him. He wants to see, do you trust him? Do you still have faith? And reason I say that you can have a person that has the strongest faith in the world. But keep in mind, Satan don't have no problem walking around in your back door trying to shake it up for you. Or make you see something that you don't need to see. And you lose it. Or the thing about it that when you start losing it, instead of getting upset and going off, ask God to help you to correct that problem. Talk to him. Read the word. When time comes and goes, and when things happen in your life, don't forget about God. Don't forget about God. Don't be ashamed to tell anybody about Jesus. And try to keep the faith. I know it might get hard sometimes, but try to keep the faith. Because like I always said, God loves you. Those Israelites that were crossing over, God loved them. God wanted to help them, and he did. God made promise to them, and he kept his promise. He got them to the land of milk and honey. But what I want to tell you is that God is there for you. He's there for me. He's there for my family. He's there for your family. But we have to tell God exactly what we want. And we have to be sincere and not greedy. But you have to understand one thing. God always works in his own time. And by God working his own time, he knew exactly what to give you and what not to give you. Don't get upset with it, because he could just be saving you from doing something wrong. Don't be like the Israelites. They crossed the Red Sea. They got a little upset because they thought that the place they left was better. And God would give them everything they needed. But their leader kept them in check and made sure that they followed God's commands. Let's pray. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. God, we just want to thank you for this day. We want to thank you for this moment. We want to thank you for this time. But God, we ask you, oh Father, to go into sick homes, go into hospitals, go on the job sites, go into homes and help someone. Someone right now need angels in their location, but they don't know how to call on them. And God, I ask you to send angels to their house, to the hospital, to their job site, to get them a better direction of which way to go. God, we need you. And God, we love you. God, there is no other God that we want to serve but you. You let your son Jesus die on the cross for us. And we thank you for that. Because you gave us another opportunity to get it right. And God, we want to get it right. God, we just ask you, oh God, to put your walls of protection around us and lead us into a better direction so that we can help someone and show someone the right way and tell them about Jesus Christ. God, we love you and we adore you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, then again, I would like to let you know it's that time. If you enjoyed that message, please subscribe and ring that bell. And tell somebody about it. Don't leave us hanging like this. Tell somebody about it. And let them know that Jesus lived. See you next time.